they have a suspect in custody. He's hospitalized along with the injured, and the suspect is a 20-year-old by the name of Phoenix Eichner. Officials at the news conference tell us that Phoenix Eichner is the son of a Leon County Sheriff's deputy. His mom, the sheriff's deputy, had weapons in the home, and her son had access to his mother's weapons, at least one of which was found at the scene. It appears to not have been an active service weapon, as they're known, but rather a gun that his mother had possibly purchased from the police department when she was issued a new service weapon. Whatever the case may be, 2 people are dead, and again, 6 others are injured. The suspect, the son of a sheriff's deputy, is now in police custody. Look at some of the scenes that have been coming in throughout the day from Tallahassee, Florida, on campus at Florida State University. We're covering it from a number of different angles. Misty Marris on the legal side is here with me in studio in New York, also joined by a couple of colleagues here who are former FBI, and Stuart Kaplan, who was with us moments ago and has weighed in, but will do so in more detail. And Tracy Walders, former FBI, former CIA, and a NewsNation contributor, has been with us throughout. Tracy and Stuart, I'll get to you in a moment. But back to you, Misty, on the issues that have now come up that are legal questions, I would suspect, for this suspect's mother, you were saying.
Yeah, certainly could be a legal issue for the mother. The thing is that you've got an adult, you've got a 20-year-old. We'd be having a way different conversation if you had someone who was 15 or 16 years old, right? We'd be talking about potential culpability for failure to keep those guns in a safe and secure manner in violation of Florida law. So there's absolutely, Tracy was speaking to it before, there's going to be an internal investigation. You're talking about somebody who's in law enforcement, a former, sounds like it's a former service weapon. How is that gun accessed? And that's certainly going to be a part of this. And then, Connell, as far as what we know, we learned a lot. We learned the identity of the suspect. That means law enforcement likely has a lot more information than they're sharing at this particular moment.
That's what you were saying beforehand, right. But they did give us
they gave us more than we expected.
Right, a lot more than we expected, in detail about the suspect's background and his relationship to a sheriff's deputy, and Leon County officials were among those on hand, explaining all of that. Let's listen to a clip from that news conference, then come back and talk on the other side for context. This was just moments ago.
The shooter is 20-year-old Phoenix Eichner, and he's the son of a Leon County Sheriff deputy. Our Deputy Eichner has been with the Leon County Sheriff's Office for over 18 years. She has a tremendous job that she's done. Her service to this community has been exceptional. Unfortunately, her son had access to one of her weapons, and that was one of the weapons that was found at the scene.
Let's talk about this part of it, the access to the weapon and who the suspect's mother was. I want to get both Tracy and Stuart to weigh in on that. Tracy, you first.
You know, it's really interesting because we talked about this press conference just in general, and what I found so forthcoming, and to Misty's point, actually, is that we did learn more about the suspect than I also expected that we would learn, and I think that's on purpose. I think people would start putting 2 and 2 together because this individual was a current student. Individuals clearly knew him at the university, and I think they had no choice but to say that he was the son of an active deputy. They wanted to get in front, in my opinion, of that information to sort of, I guess, quell the rumor mill,
yes.
If you will. In terms of the legalities, obviously, I'm not, an attorney. It is very common, actually, to buy back a weapon that is no longer in service. I actually have done that as a former FBI agent. I did that when we switched weapons companies. And so, listen, to Misty's point earlier, this is not a minor. This is a 20-year-old. So does she have culpability in terms of securing those weapons? That I don't think necessarily is going to play out in this case, but I think they just went right straight forward with who he was and who his mother was to get in front of all of this.
No, I agree. They knew that they would be better coming from them than coming out in a different way. But Stuart, you are a lawyer in addition to being former FBI. Your thoughts?
So I will say this, legally, there's a component or an element if he was under the age of 18. But I will say this, that I don't care what age a person is that has access to your home and potentially has access to your weapons. As being a law enforcement officer retired law enforcement officer, or just a gun owner, you have an absolute responsibility to ensure that your weapons are safe and secure, and that if in fact you cohabitate or that there are other individuals that live or have access into your home, I don't care whether or not the person is 20 or 120, you ultimately are the sole responsible party to ensure that no other person other than yourself can gain access unless for exigent circumstances. That's number one.
Okay.
Number two is it was also revealed this afternoon that he also showed up, the shooter, with a shotgun. And so he was really ready to bear down and create as much carnage as possible, notwithstanding it's just been highlighted that he was in possession of his mother's previous service weapon. And I do believe, and I will go out on a limb and suggest that I will not be surprised if there's a mental health component to this scenario, where in fact that, if in fact that is true, there may be liability to be accepted or have to be accepted with respect to an obligation of a gun owner, knowing that there may be an individual who may be having mental health issues and being in possession or have access to those weapons.
That question about mental health was asked at the news conference, but not one of the questions that was not answered directly. Misty, you want to pick up on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So all great points. There's three buckets here, let's call it. So first, we've got what we call the internal investigation, like we spoke about before. She's a law enforcement officer. That piece is going to happen. And then there's civil liability and the potential for that, which I was speaking of, was their negligence, allowing this weapon to be accessible to somebody who may have been a known threat. That's going to be very, very fact specific. And then when you're talking about potential criminal culpability, when you have an adult, there'll be a strong argument that it's an independent criminal act, so it would basically cut off any criminal culpability to the gun owner. That's not to say that there could be factual information we do not currently have that could change that analysis. It's going to be based on the totality of the circumstances and really, really specific into the weeds as far as how this happened.
Interesting. Tracy, what would you like to still know? I know both of you and Misty has said that we learned more maybe than we thought, but again, there's still some details or some questions probably that we still want to ask. What are they from your point of view?
So I think a couple things. One of the things that the acting director of the FBI of the Tallahassee office, I believe, or Jacksonville, excuse me, stated was that they were going to help going through digital evidence because there was going to be a lot of it. And so I want to know actually from the suspect's perspective what their social media looks like, because I think that's going to go a long way to discussing these mental health issues, as well as any other motive that we see. I also do want to know, how he got a hold of the weapon. To Stuart's point, I could not agree with him more that we do have a responsibility to secure our weapons, regardless of who's in our home and their ages.
Yeah, whether you're a cop or whoever you are, is the point, right?
100%. And so I wanted more about how he gained access to that and what his motive was. I think those are really the two things that I want to know at this point.
That makes sense. Stuart, what about you? What are the questions still outstanding?
The big question, obviously, is there's going to be a criminal prosecution. And so, unfortunately, from the law enforcement perspective, you are talking about an arduous task with respect to collecting and processing the wide breadth of the carnage that was left behind. And so you're talking about this area being closed probably up until through Monday. And you have to understand one of the explanations for their measured response, meaning the law enforcement officials, are that they don't want to give up too much information that may ultimately be beneficial to this now apprehended individual who's now going to be the charged defendant in a criminal prosecution. And so now they have to flip the page and work towards preserving to ensure that a criminal prosecution is going to go through without any mistakes.
Makes sense. And he's not, as it says at the bottom of the screen, talking to the police. He did not make comments, we were told, after he was brought in. Thank you, team. We have the former assistant.